Welcome, everybody, to another great REDX podcast. We're so glad that you're joining us here today. I'm Robert Sullivan. I'll be your host. We, every week, go across this whole country to find the best agents, coaches out there to help you and help us know more about what's going on in this crazy real estate market and to up our skills and our knowledge. And today we have a great guest in Trudy Padilla. Trudy, say hi to everybody that's tuning in.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And we are excited to have you here. We are going to talk about some strategies that Trudy's been using in all sorts of markets. Wherever the market is, up or down, we're going to talk about GeoLeads and how you can use that to keep your business moving. But before we get into all of that, just a couple housekeeping items. We want to make sure that you never miss a great episode of the REDX podcast. So you can find us at theredx.com/podcast to always see our past episodes and see our upcoming episodes, and make sure you join us live. And it's a participatory event. So when you're there, you can go ahead and chat in any questions you might have today, and we'll try to get them answered. If we don't get them answered on the show, we can continue that conversation at the lead gen conversation on Facebook in our group, where we can continue to help each other be better and be successful in any market. So again, we're glad you're here. Trudy, we're glad you're here. There are a lot of people have seen you before on the show or know who you are, but for those that are maybe just joining us today, give us a quick introduction of yourself, and then we'll start talking GeoLeads.
Well, great. Well, thank you again for having me. So I'm Trudy Padilla. I am a realtor and the team leader of the True Dat Can Sell That team here in North Florida. So I live in St. Augustine, cover everywhere from Jacksonville all the way down to Ormond Beach and over to the west as well. So we cover a wide territory here in Northeast Florida. I have been a real estate agent for about 6 years. And prior to that, I had really 25 years in real estate in mortgage lending and operations, fulfillment management, and title insurance. So a lot of years in real estate, but I love it.
So you know your stuff. So that's why we're having here. And everyone could use a home in St. Augustine. So, if you're looking for a good vacation home, then call Trudy, right? And
that's right. True Dat Can Sell
That. Awesome. Well, Trudy, we talked a little bit before coming on live that one of the strategies that you use is with GeoLeads, and that really helps get you kind of a baseline sustainable business, kind of regardless of the ups and downs of a market. So I just want to jump right in there and let's hear about some of the strategies that you're using with GeoLeads right now.
Yes, I'd love to. It really is one of my favorite strategies. It's what I call real estate matchmaking, because what I use GeoLeads for is to help fulfill buyer needs and also prospect for sellers at the same time. I started this actually, I think it was 2016. I had a buyer that was looking in a condominium and there were just no units for sale. So I just started reaching out to the unit owners and with postcards and kind of, really, informal, hey, and I got out of, I think, 102 leads out of that. And we were able to get the buyer into a condo, and they're actually still there.
Awesome.
And so it really turned on a light bulb for me. And shortly after that is when I was introduced to REDX, and I thought, wow, I can do so much more with this information, with this data. And so I've really expanded on that. And so now it really is a service that we on the team provide for all of our buyers, right? So that has not changed. I mean, in the last few years, in fact, in the last 2 years, we've really had to accelerate that in a lot of ways because there just has been so little inventory. But we've gotten quite creative with it. And so the way we use GeoLeads is this: if a buyer says, hey, I really just love this neighborhood. Then we do just good old-fashioned circle prospecting in the neighborhood, right? And we just call and then postcards and sometimes door knock. I have actually shown up to homes with a contract in hand before. So we really do use this. But we've actually even taken it a step further. And one of the things that we do is really just identify just unique features of a home. So not too long ago, I had a buyer that really needed a mother-in-law unit. And so there was just not any on the market, and what could we do? So I went to the MLS and pulled up all the sales with mother-in-law units from the beginning of time, and then I started getting the data, around, who owns that. I imported that into Vortex, and I started just individually going and searching for the data and reaching out to the homeowners. Now, ultimately, we were able to find them something else, but I was able to stay in touch with several homeowners, and continue those conversations up into a listing. So, my buyers get a little nervous sometimes when I say that. They were like, well, what if you don't like the house? And I'm like, well, I'm still a listing agent, so I can still sell that house. You're not obligated to buy a house that I find you.
Yeah,
But if I can find something,
yeah, that's something I really love about this strategy, because you're doing a service for the
Mhm.
buyer, while at the same time you're making friends, making contacts for future clients, regardless if you do, like you said, you're a matchmaker. Whether you make a match with that phone call that day, you're
Yeah,
still, it's not a waste of anyone's time, because you're building
that's
your
right.
own database and serving your buyer. So I
Yes.
like that a lot.
I mean, it's just a great synergy. Truly, it really is. And I've had situations in the past where you'll reach out, you send information, and you don't hear back necessarily, but there's a seller out there that's getting ready to list, and they've actually got their realtor to call me back, and we were able to put together a deal.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah. So even if you're just planting a seed, you're really, it really is a great service to your buyer when you're advocating for them. And so, and that's how we present it. So it is very similar to, when you're updating your sellers. This is the marketing strategy, and this is how we're going about finding buyers for you. This is the sort of the opposite to the buyer. This is our marketing strategy, and this is how we're finding a house for you. And it's not just MLS listings, but it's also we're looking off market, and this is how we're doing it.
That's awesome. And, we probably have people, especially over the last 2 years, there's been less prospecting because there's just been
Yeah,
transactions happening, right? And
right.
so maybe if you could, for those tuning in, they're like, man, I haven't picked up the phone and done a just listed, just sold, or done a circle prospecting session where I'm
Mhm.
cold calling someone that's not selling their home yet.
Yeah.
Expired FISBO, they're trying to sell their home. So this is a little bit different conversation. Could you walk us through a little bit, maybe a script or an approach that you
Yeah.
take when you call those people?
So when I reach out, my first phone call it's a very simple script, just like I think most scripts are. But what I often add is the buyer's first name. So I'll say something like, "Hey, is this so and so? Well, this is Trudy, and I'm just reaching out because I'm working with Tommy and Susie." To help them find a home, and they've identified your home as something that they'd be very interested in. Have you given any thought to selling? And just let that conversation go from there. I mean, really, what we're doing is creating conversation, and you can kind of, lead from there. It is helpful to, I don't disclose the full name of the buyers, but I do like to add the name of the buyer because it's legitimate. And, the last 2 years, plenty of agents were calling and saying, I have buyers. And not that they were lying, but this is much
It's like
more
everyone has
personal.
buyers.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so if they're going to, really take the call, and I've used it in the past, and it really has been super helpful, to the point where, I've had, sellers, often when you call, obviously, if they're intrigued, but they haven't been thinking about selling, this is still a long road, probably longer than my buyers have to wait. So I'll have people call me back and say, hey, you probably already got Tommy and Susie in a home, but yeah.
But it does that, like, humanizes, personalizes
Yes.
that touch, right? And so that I like that, just adding that, because I think the rest of the script, you're calling a circle prospecting a GeoLead. It's nice because not everyone's calling them, and so you're probably
Right.
the only one contacting them that day, that week,
Yeah.
about this. But that little extra of including the buyer, potential buyer's name,
Mhm.
it does still set you apart and makes it memorable. So I like that.
It does, and often the next part of the conversation, I usually include why Tommy and Susie are interested in the home, right? So it might be the guest house, right? Did you know that there's only 250 guest homes in this zip code, and and you're one of them, and understanding a little bit more makes it more sincere, right? Because again, the last thing we want to we want to create relationship, and it's a lot easier to create relationship when they're not feeling spammed.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And how often, because you're having this conversation, they maybe aren't thinking about selling their home, but when you do match make,
Mhm.
how often is it that you then get both ends of that transaction, or do they usually find their own agent, or like how does that process go once
Well,
you've made a match?
yeah, in most cases, it is both ends of the transaction. But like I said, it has happened before where I've reached out and they didn't call me back. They called their realtor, and their realtor reached out to me, and that's perfectly okay too. We're very, very happy to match folks. I mean, it is, and it's a service, and being able to speak to that in buyer consultations is huge. We're working with a couple right now who have a particular floor plan in mind. They've fallen in love with this floor plan that's by this builder, and the builder doesn't have any inventory of that particular floor plan coming up. So we've gone and dug around to find homes like that have been sold in the past. And now we're using GeoLeads to get the data so that we can start reaching out to those owners. And so
Yeah.
using floor plans is an interesting one, but I have done this a number of times in the past. And what I do is I find out where the builders have built that floor plan in the past, and I keep a pretty tight relationship with site reps here. So they're usually very willing to share and let us know where those floor plans were built. And then you just go back and kind of search. You refine it by square footage, right? Because the floor plan is usually like really close, sometimes to the dot. Yeah. And so, I mean, it is possible to find that different ways, but at some point you have to say, I don't have all the time in the world to do this. So yeah, but that's what we're doing right now, and we found a few homes, and we're reaching out.
Yeah, and it does set you apart again at that first point of contact of like, hey, do I want you to represent me as a buyer? And hey, well, here's the extra stuff that we do for our clients, and it's been
Right.
working.
Mhm.
And so that is just one more reason why they're going to want to come to you when they want to buy a home. We do have a question from
Mhm.
Deanna. She wants to know, so you're going to all these different neighborhoods and using GeoLeads often. And her
Mhm.
question is, how do you keep track of everybody now that you're adding to your sphere, into your database? Because you're kind of going neighborhood by
Mhm.
neighborhood by neighborhood, not just one neighborhood. So do you have a system, or what do you
Dude,
do with all these
that's a
contacts?
great question, by the way. That really is a good question because I don't include, until we've done a business together, they're not in my sphere of influence. So they don't go into that database, the database that I use to nurture my prior clients in my sphere of influence. So I really keep them in Vortex, and I have folders set up in Vortex. And that's how I manage, um, you know, the consistency. So I literally use all of the tools in Vortex to manage how often I've spoken with them, to keep the notes. And like I said, I have file folders for each client or each neighborhood that we've targeted.
Okay, that's awesome. So
Yeah,
until you do a full transaction, you keep
right.
them in Vortex as like
Correct.
your lead management system, where
That's
they're
right.
still a lead. I still may need to follow up with them, and then once you do finish a transaction with them, then you move them into your drip
Yes.
campaigns or your sphere,
Right.
in that
Right.
management.
That's
Very
right.
cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it is very cool. And some of the things, I also use postcards and sometimes letters to send out. And so one of the things that I like about Vortex is how I can do a mail merge. And so if I really have a wide group of people to reach out, I'll use the mail merge and send out letters that way.
Yeah, and so that works obviously if someone says I want this neighborhood, you either circle the neighborhood, outline the neighborhood or drop a pin. But when you're doing floor plans, you mentioned it's like do you pull you said you know where some of these floor plans are. Do you pull the full neighborhood or you're using filters to just get those homes so then you can
Yeah.
just put them in a folder?
So it could be a combination, right? So the filters, if you really know, so I can then just pull the whole neighborhood and then sort by filter by square footage. If I am using a different feature like the guest house that I shared, that requires a little bit more work, but there were so few of them in the area that they were looking that it didn't really take as much time. So what I did was I found them on the MLS, and then I pulled that data and matched it with our tax assessor information, and you can download into a Excel worksheet. And so I was able to upload, and then we have to kind of singly go and grab the GeoLead information, for that.
Kind of
So
reverse, yeah.
that one
Okay.
was a much more time intensive process, but it was really worth it because this was a VIP client of ours. And so we really wanted to go the extra mile.
Trudy, I need to have you back on or like another time to just be like our trainer for GeoLeads because you know every feature that it can do. That
I
is
love
awesome.
technology. I think that is the best way we can leverage ourselves in the industry. So if you use the technology well, it will do the work for you.
That is, yeah, that is amazing. I sit here in our office. I could walk around the corner here and show you all of our devs, and they're probably like, I want them to tune in so they can just like give themselves a pat on the back that like, hey, all of the features are getting used.
Yes.
That's great.
Yep.
Now we talked beforehand that you don't just preach this, but you have actually written an entire playbook
I
on
have.
how to use that. So I want to make sure that we can maybe see that, and if we haven't talked to any of the steps in there, that you can kind of show that off.
I will. So this is just sort of a low tech version. I just printed it out, but I do have just kind of a 3-page playbook that just gives examples of how to do the geofarming matchmaking. And then I have some scripts and objections in here. And I also have shown how we communicate. So in addition to phone calls, we also use postcards and sometimes letters for a bigger audience. So the postcards look like this, if you can see that. And so what I do is I copy these. I just write out this. This is basically I'm working with a buyer is very interested in your home. If you considered selling, please give me a call. And and then I just print them out and I have a stack sitting next to me, and then I can just write their name here in a black pen and their address and stick it. I just sent about 10 out a few minutes ago. So it's really easy because of course we don't always get to connect as many times as we call. So I like to follow up with a postcard. It's
That's
very
so you just
easy.
have a
That's
stack of those that look
that's
that
right.
that are handwritten, but
Yep,
you've used technology to make a whole bunch of handwritten ones at
that's
once with
right.
copies. I
Yep.
love that. So some people are just listening, or they will be listening here in the near future, and they didn't get to see that example. Is there a way
Yes.
that people can either get a hold of you or see this on a
Yes.
website to be able to see those examples?
Yeah, if they will email me, I will send a copy of this playbook to them, and it has the example of the postcards in it. It has the scripts. It shows how we use GeoLeads for matchmaking. It also includes what I call our pro tip for creating an exceptional buyer experience. So we update our active clients on a weekly basis. So everyone who is about to list with us or has listed with us, and everyone that is an active buyer, we actually send out a weekly update, and that update for buyers includes, a recap of all the showings that we've had with them in the last week. And then we also go over, like, we kind of look at the listing alerts and say, we pick out our favorite and say, hey, did you see this one? Right? Just to make sure that they're actively looking at the same time. And then we include, if we have them on our real estate matchmaking system, then we share with them exactly what the updates are. So this week we called 20 prospective sellers, and these were our results. This week we have 20 more that we're reaching out to, and we'll keep you updated. And then I do a weekly market update video, and that goes out to all of our active clients. So it's a great way of just staying in touch, even if you're not usually you're talking to them on a regular basis, but they love that Monday morning update.
Everything you're sharing, we've talked to a lot of real estate agents. This is gold. I mean, this is why you're successful where you're at. You say it in passing, like, oh, I also have this video update. Oh, I also tell them the work I did for them. But this is good stuff that, especially newer agents that haven't been in these habits and routines for the last couple of years. Anyone who replicates this is going to be successful. I need to get the email from you. The people are like, wait, what? You said email. What's the email? Where do they email you?
So my email address is trudy@trudatcansellthat.com.
All right. We'll put it in the comments. Trudy@trudatcansellthat.com.
That's right.
And they can just connect with you directly, and you're going to give them this whole playbook.
Yes. I would
All
love
right.
that.
Yeah, Larry was just asking for it. Larry, we're putting in the comments right now in case you didn't catch it. And good. We'll make sure everybody has that. Well, we're running a little bit towards the end of our time here, but you've been sharing some really, really important stuff. So I want to make sure before we have to wrap everything up, what would you like everyone here to know that's been listening that maybe we haven't gotten to, or reiterate something we have talked about in this playbook? What would you like to leave everybody with?
Well, I guess the thing that resonates with me right now is that, the market is definitely changing. And whenever we're in a changing market, you really have to double down on your activities while you're going through that change. And so I think REDX, particularly GeoLeads, has been really fundamental to our success in actually going out and grabbing the additional leads that we need to create the business that we want. So of course it's a relationship business. So we are very lucky to have the clients that we've had in the past and that continue to refer to us. We also get quite a few realtor referrals. We love to work with real estate agents. But REDX is really the third pillar for us. I didn't mention, and I think this is important because in this market, investors are still very active. And I work with a lot of investors. I have a meetup group the first Thursday of every month. We've been meeting for about 5 years now, and I use REDX often in helping find information for properties that get on our radar. And so it really is a powerful tool to complement all facets of the business, both from working with buyers, working with investors, and working with sellers.
Thank you, Trudy, for saying that. That is amazing. And again, I think that it really shows why you're successful, because I love what you said about, hey, the market is changing. And so it's time to double down on these activities, on your activity and your personal production. I think there's a lot of people out there fearful about the change. There's a lot of people that weren't in the business in 2008.
Yeah.
Or just haven't seen a market shift like this before, that are worried. But I think if we're listening to you and doing these activities that you've talked about, you can throw that fear aside, because if you double down on the right activities, the right routines, and talking to people, building those relationships, your business can continue to thrive. People are still buying homes. People are still selling homes, and those that are doing the right activities are going to continue to thrive. So
that's
thank
right.
you for sharing that.
4.8 million transactions in America this year. And I don't think any one of us has 4.8 million in our goals. So there's plenty of opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, and especially those that are doubling down on that activity, especially
Right.
those that are doing the right thing. So,
Yeah.
Trudy, thank you so much for sharing that. Those tuning in today just got a masterclass on how to continue thriving, and so thank you for all what you shared on GeoLeads, but every little tidbit along the way, super helpful for our listeners. All of our listeners, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here again this week. Wherever you enjoy listening to the REDX podcast, on our website at redx.com/podcast, or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. We are glad that you joined us today. And we will see you here next week at this same time and place. And you can find out more information about our upcoming episodes on our website. And Trudy, again, thank you for your time today, for coming on and sharing such great information for our listeners. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you here next week.